Hello and welcome back to Fuse Coding. I'm your host, edA-qa mort-ora-y, and today we're going to go back to the Dice app and play around with that a little bit. If you don't know who I am, I'm one of the programmers at Fuse. We design cross-platform tools and for rapid mobile developments, and I describe it differently every time, and I think so does our sales at the moment, but that's okay. And let's take a look what I do. So I demonstrate a lot of the things I do at the high level, and so I do a lot of the work on what you end up, I guess, seeing, and that includes layout and animation. And so this is the Dice app. Let me close OBS back here. That's the streaming program. And we're in preview right now, and the way we left the Dice app last time is we added a little bit of serialization, and that means that these values load, and so you notice we're not starting at the basic state. Our Dice app, what it does is it lets you create dice, and it shows you the expected value of the roll. This came up after a session playing the Dark Souls board game, where we wanted to see if you had these orange and black dice, what would the expected value be? Is a blue and a black better than two black with a +1, for example? And so you can remove a die, and then we could add a blue one, Dark Souls, a blue die. And you might want to say add a modifier of 1, and expected value is 4, and as opposed to a black die, which is 3.3, but if we had an expected value of 2, it'd be a bit higher. And so we serialized this last time, and it's a little bit harder to test in the up here, but every time one of these closes, we save it. And we also added a remove feature, so when you swipe to the left, there's a slight defect here, but we'll deal with that another time, because it's not a problem in our code, it's a problem in our model handling code at the moment. And what I'd like to do today is, because a lot of what we're saying in this, especially in the serialization, when I got the serialization, it started seeming a bit too simple, even though it's a bit complex, is that we're not dealing with enough. We're dealing with one file, and this app is a little bit too simple. It's a small app, and I'd like to add a second page to this, so you can have a quick dice rolling page. And this will introduce several bits to us that'll let us create a navigator, or in this case I think I might use a page control, and then I'm going to have to split up my files and worry a little bit more about structuring. That is, I want to push this app a little bit more in the direction of being something you might actually create, and it gives us a great test for as these have always been doing, these give us great tests for things that should be supported and should be done easily without error. Now, where are we going to start? We're going to have to move this scroll view here away, because our main page should really be the main app, and what we have now is we have the scrolling. We have just this one page app, and I want to move that to a separate file first of all. And so where do I want to put this? Do I want to put these in a pages directory? I have to start thinking about this. We have these views. Maybe I want to create pages. I'm not clear yet. This is a little bit unclear. So let's say, I don't know where we should put it. Standard views for the dice. We're not saying a view for the page. Let's say page. Let's just call it, instead of creating a pages directory, let's just call it page. And these are dice sets. Page dice sets. We'll call it that. And we want to take everything we had before and stick it in there. The client panel is going to come back here. And actually, we're going to leave the debug panel because that's global. So the pilot panel comes out. We're going to leave the title there for now. And stick this over here, and this becomes a page. And we'll call this was dice sets. Or dice stat comparison. Dice stats. Let's call it dice stats, because comparison's fairly long. And we'll unindent this and put it over here. And this has to be a class. Here's class equals page dice stats. And what I'm doing is I'm preparing the stuff to create the second basic pages. So we have base stats, and in the main view, what we would need to do is we'd have to say page dice stats, and this should work now as is. And we get it. You see it reloads over there. But now we want to put this in a navigation. We want to say, let's put a page control here. We want to have multiple ones of these. One page control should work fine first of all. This should still work when I save it. It should happily reload. You might not see anything. And we're going to create a second one. page UX class equals page, and let's call it the dice roller. Title equals dice roller. And I'll just throw some text on this page so we can see something dice roller. Throw it in the middle for now. I do this a lot, especially when we have, just a second, go back up one. When you have an interactive viewer like preview, you can save quite often, and then you don't get too far off, and when it doesn't reload, you're not too far away. If you do a lot of work at once, then you're left looking for more as to what the problem actually is. But since it reloads dynamically anyways, might as well take advantage of it. And okay, so we have two, and reload it. Now we might not be able to get to the other page. That's fine. Or did we not actually add it? Yeah, well, really hard to get to it if you don't add it. That's trick number one. Make sure you add your pages to your page control. And now we can get to the other one. Now, swiping on such a view isn't actually a great UX here. And I know a lot of apps do this, and it's really bad because when you have things like swiping in the items and then swiping on the view, it gets to be really difficult. So we're going to create a little panel at the bottom that shows our pages, and we're going to use the page indicator for that. Page indicator. And this is default a stack panel. And instead we're going to make it do something else. We're going to do dock it to the bottom. Dock equals bottom, and we're going to give it a... Well, it's a stack panel, so we can simply give it... What do I want to do here? I want to dock the bottom. And actually, I might put it inside another panel for clarity. Then I don't have to worry about it too much. Then we'll put the page indicator here. Then we'll worry about layout after. Let's just get this stuff working first. And for each item we're going to have, let's just do whatever a button is. And we have a button type, I thought, in our resources. Standard button text. Standard button, actually I didn't call it text, did I? I called it a label. And this shows a binding to the page title. So whatever's in the title, we'll worry about what happens. Actually, we're going to click it. We're not going to say what happens with it first. We're just going to stick clicked here. And on the page control itself, we're going to say interaction equals none. You can't use the interaction on this control anymore. And if we save this, it's going to happily reload on us, right? Yeah, no, until I make mistakes. If you're good at mistakes, must specify attribute navigation. Okay, yes. The page indicator doesn't figure out on its own which navigation it should use. And this makes a lot of sense because the indicators are rarely inside the navigation. So you have to specify explicitly. So we're going to say main nav. Navigation equals main nav. Do not have I spelt interaction wrong? Okay, now you don't see it because of the log, but there we have it. We have the two, dice stats and a dot. Alright, yeah, okay. This is supposed to be the dot template. This is the one it uses. It's called dot because they used to just be dots, and so we just stuck with dot. And so now you see the dice roller and dice stats. We probably want to put a background color to here, so the color equals, in our resources, what do we say for such things? Color primary, or what does it say the title is? We'll give it the same as that. Color primary, okay, just color primary. Color primary. And down here we might not actually want to use the standard buttons anymore because, or we might, I think they're white anyways. But we can align this to the center then, center, just to give it some very quick setup. And what we want to do is we want to here, now we want to move to it. So set main active equals, and this is a special binding, the node. So let me explain again. The standard button page title says that for this page indicator is basically in each statement. We have each and use them in many places. And the iteration source of this is this page control. It says, well, what are all the pages in here? And for each one of those, instantiate the template called dot. Again, dot's kind of a backwards compatible name for it, and there are other things that could be used, but we'll stick with dot because that's what's in the docs. And page says, we'll bind to the current page of this indicator and take its title. And you notice in both of the pages we gave them titles. And page node is a special one that says, well, the actual node itself. And set main active is the active node. We're going to say, well, when you click on this, make that the active node. So when I save this, so the interaction is gone. I can't swipe, as you can see, but if I click on it, that'll swipe me between the pages. And this is something you typically want to do. This is a very common setup. This doesn't look like the typical mobile app because I've thrown in the standard buttons for now. But just imagine this with a little icon on the bottom. And we can add maybe the icons later. Or no, let's do it quickly now. Let's add an icon now. But or not. I don't want to get sidetracked right now because there's a little bit trickier bits with the text. But we can get to that. And so this is your action bar. And we should also show if it's active here, you might want to show that it's active. And activity is actually easy enough to do. And I'll just do it. I'll do a very quick thing to show which one's active. While active, I'm going to say rectangle layer equals background color equals. And I'll just make this pure white just so we can see something. And because there's not much padding there, you won't see it. So maybe 0, 0, 0 is better. Oh, yeah. It's helpful if it's part of the template. So actually I'm going to stick the template at a higher level to encompass all of this stuff. Dot. This is a standard button, and this is no longer the template. And we're going to stick the clicked on the whole control. Because, hey, why not? We don't need the button anymore. We probably don't even need the button. We can just use text, but... Okay. Now this is actually rather unattractive. And you notice it doesn't slide back and forth. But I just want to do something so we see something for now, which one's active. And we can clean that up later. On the dice roller page, let's get a little bit into this first. Let's take a quick drink. And then I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to create a small palette of dice on the bottom. This is another user experience thing to consider. If you need something by default and you need a palette where people are going to quickly access stuff, consider where their thumbs are, because a lot of people use thumb interfaces, and there's these sweet spots near the bottom. And for things that need to be accessed quickly, the bottom is where you want to be. You can actually look up the zones. It's a little bit more than that. But for example, it wouldn't make sense to put the default palette at the top, because it's not something you quickly do. People that use their finger and tap it that way, they don't care, but the people that use their thumb have more limited range. And I'm sure those studies will change all the time as people grow up with the phones, and they change their usage habits. But for now, let's put the palette on the bottom. And what I want in the palette is I want us to be able to click on a die and it rolls it. We have all these dice. And let's start with the basic ones. And so on the bottom here, page dice roller, we want to have a palette of dice. And so we're probably going to break this up too into a dock panel. So put another dock panel inside here. Dock panel is a type of layout that is subtractive layout. Every time you dock something, more and more space is taken away, as opposed to a stack panel, which is an additive layout. And a grid is also subtractive, but a grid is more as a divisive layout. And that's how you should decide, whereas a plane panel has an overlapping layout. And at the bottom, we're going to put a wrap panel, because we want to put a whole bunch of items. Dock equals bottom. We don't need any coloring for it. And what items are we trying to iterate? We're going to have to go into the state now. In the main state, what did we have? We had the data sets, item sets, and we don't want item sets now. We want all of the dice. So we have standard dice there and Dark Souls dice. We don't have all dice, but let's just focus on one first. And again, often in programming I do this. Even if I know this isn't the right data I want, I know it's roughly the form I want, and it lets me focus on doing one thing at a time. So we're going to iterate over the standard dice equals standard dice. Oh, I put the wrong item there. That's why I did it. And I haven't used this in a little while, so I can't remember what the dice are in it. So let's just put value equals, what is the name of these dice, first of all? Helpful items. Object to list items.standard dice. And what are these? These are the static dice, standard dice. So they have a name. They have a name. Great. They have a name. That's all we need. Dice.name. And reloaded it. Okay, and we end up back on the first page. Now, this is going to happen quite a bit. And there is some state serialization in preview. The issue with state serialization is that we know we're going to be modifying the state, so there's only so much it can do to restore us to that state. And this is part of the reason why you compartmentalize stuff. But first of all, you can see our values there. And what I'm going to do, and this is very helpful, is while working on one page, because this is all dynamic, you can simply comment out the other page. Just say it's gone. Just pretend it's not there. So when I save it, I only have the one page. Or you can move that item up. And this makes development a lot faster. And what we're trying to move towards as we get this set up, a larger and larger project, is that this dice roll, page dice stats, you'd actually be able to have an independent project which is just this page, but it uses the same state mechanism. And that's what we'd be trying to go for, is that we completely reuse this. But for now, I'll just comment it out because everybody can understand that. I don't want to introduce too much at any one time. Also because I'm not entirely sure what that should look like. So we have these items. And again, let's not worry about graphics first. Let's worry about these working. We're going to give them each a panel. Color equals, let's give it primary color again. Primary color. And we're going to give it a lot of padding. Padding equals, say, 10,5. Give it some spacing. And hit test mode because we want to be able to click on it. Local bounds without worrying about it. The color would also trip it up, but it's easier just to say explicitly I want the local bounds. Text value equals name and a panel. And click. This is where we're going to have to start introducing new state, because this page should have state all on its own. Now the trick is, well, how do we give a page state? How exactly do we do that? There's a couple different ways, and I'm showing it's, well, let's take the correct way first. What we can do is we're going to give page control a set of pages. Now let's call these main pages to be clear. Now it's going to complain when I save this. And now we're going to create actual items in the state file for these. And I'm just going to jam them into one file first of all, just so we can see it all together first. We have a page dice roller and a page dice stats. So you can actually do this. Main item set, where's our main file? Class page dice roller. We'll just do it for the one because the other one's commented out right now anyways. Constructor. And this name has a meaning. It's the same name as my page, and this simplifies part of the setup. And so this dot pages is going to be new page dice roller. Let's see if this works. What happened now? I'm complaining about something. There's nothing named, oh, primary color, wonderful. Color primary. Put my namespace first. Well, I have a problem, that's fine. Main page is not found, that's fine. If main pages were not found, it shouldn't have created anything. Main pages, and state, main pages. Okay. As we have the spacing and stuff, that's fine. In loading, okay, that's where we have it there. Something I'm not sure in preview, I think I'm going to have to talk to our tools team about this, is that when we output our own messages here, it always triggers up as a little red, and I don't know, because it always looks like there might be an issue there. Now, if you saw the other issue was page dice roller, no template matching path. Page dice roller, but that should have worked. Okay, no, it has to be this one. Yeah. I forgot to add a template to it. Although the template name from the path is defaulted, we need a template name here, and I'll use the same name here. Okay. And because nothing changed, it's kind of hard to see that something, might actually happen. And so what this does, though, is when we have these pages and we have a template and we set up the pages here, is this page now becomes the context for this. So if you don't believe me, we can do this instead. This.dice equals object2list items.standarddice. This is now covering those dice, and again, you still don't have to believe me because we're just going to bind to the same thing. But if I save this.dice, and it complains about something, it's just loading, it's not complaining. So this is dice and this is standard dice, and on the page we called standard dice before. Now we're just going to say dice because we're supposed to be bound to this new context. And again, because you didn't see anything, it's hard to tell if it actually worked. So let's make it actually do something. Let's change the padding to 15 just so you see something move. Okay, you can see something move, but that might not actually be reloading. But we have a clicked now. And this clicked is good because now we can see that, now if you really want to trust me, we'll have this clicked over here, and we can put the handler in this new page, clicked, and we can actually stick it right up here. Clicked equals select die, take it off there. And that problem there is probably doesn't know what select die is. Yeah. And so in the main state, we're going to do select die. And this has arguments. And we'll just log out which die this is. Die args.data, or dir args.data. And that should be enough. Let's open this up. Back in the log. And when we click a die, this stuff's going to appear. So I click the D20. Let's click a D20, then a D4, then a D6. And you see that we've actually clicked those items. And this is how we associated this object, again, with the pages. We created the structure in the main class called pages, and we created the logical structure we want. So this is JavaScript object page dice roller. It's an instance of this. And the main view has this list of pages in the page control. Navigator can also do this. And we've associated it with templates. And this also makes this dynamic. So what's fun here is that we can also say this page dice stats. And because it's not in the list in JavaScript, it won't appear. Not unless we add another page down here will that one start appearing. But before I extend this page, I think I should split this off. We should start taking some concern about these files, that they have, we have some structure to it. And give me a little leeway when I move this over because I always get this wrong with the exports. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to put this in state, and we're going to say page dice roller. This is actually a view, but I'll just call it page dice roller. And export class page dice roller. I'm wondering if this should be the default. Let's just say it's the default to make it easy to use. And in the main state, then we have import page dice roller from page dice roller. Did I get lucky? I got no errors. That doesn't mean a lot. Object2list is not defined. Okay, that's correct. We have a Object2list, and we haven't imported the items, so the other one's going to want items as well. So we actually did import something, items, and now we need an Object2list. Object2list, where's that? This is a utility function. So let's do a traditional model for utility functions. Let's add them somewhere as well. And let's create another file for that. It's not really part of the state. What other domains do I have in state though? I don't want to create a new directory quite yet, so let's just call it utils, util.js. And we'll add it in there for now. As long as we have different files, we can move them around later. It's relatively easy to move things in JavaScript. You just have to change the names. And export function object to list. And then in the main state, we should be able to do import star as util from .util. This actually bugs me a bit about the JavaScript syntax. I don't know why they did this. You can't just import util. You just have to import star as util from util. It's a bit funny, and I kind of understand why they did it. It maps to the syntax basically up here. Like this is basically an import star as lifecycle from Fuse.js lifecycle. It's a bit of a mystery, but okay. We'll live with it. We didn't invent the JavaScript syntax. Can't blame us for that one. Object to list, and now we need to do util.object to list util. And we're going to do the same thing for the page dice roller. We should have a util here, and that should be able to let us create the pages again, the dice again. So now we have those items, and we're clicking them, it works fine. Looking at the logs is not so good, so let's have another set here of selected dice. And again, we're going to create a special structure, not just to the dice with a definition, because this is strictly a definition. We want to have some configuration object. So let's do class selected die. And in its constructor, we're going to take a definition, say this dot definition equals definition. And this dot result, let's leave it for 0 for now. I'll tell you what we're going to do for a second. These dice are going to have to roll, and we're going to have to have a value of these. And so what we can do now is this dot this dot selected dice equals an empty list. This dot selected dice dot push args dot data. We're going to add a definition each time to that list. And we're going to bind this out again in the page. So as you see, as we click things, it adds to a list. And then in the page itself, okay, it's gotten mad at us for something. Actually, this should be new selected die. That's not what my error is, but that should definitely be that. Object to list is not defined. Don't know where that is. Shouldn't have that problem. Util export function object to list. Okay. Why not? Why does that not work? Do I have the JavaScript syntax wrong? Let's just let's refresh the viewport just in case some of the imports have gone wrong on me. Okay, so something... We still have a few cases where the files don't correctly reload. I must have hit another one. And when you have this problem in preview, and we kind of have this trade-off between the speed of reloading and completely doing a correct reload, we're probably going to err on the side of caution now and just completely reload everything all the time, which is a little annoying in some situations, but seems to be the safer option. But if you hit any problems with it, you can always go to viewport and restart. This is quicker than a rebuild. A rebuild actually clears out all the compiled files and recreates them, whereas a restart sort of just relaunches the program. It's like you exit and restart it. And so now I have selected dice. This will push them in there. And the dice roller page, we're going to put them somewhere. We're going to show the dice, and let's just do it some panel in the middle. and each items equals selected dice. And let's just show the name of it again for now, just to show that something's happening. But it's not name now, it's definition.name, because we stored the value in definition, and that's over in the dice roller. See, we have a selected die, this dot definition. And let's give it a value as well. Is it value or result? Result, I think. Result. Okay. Now nothing can happen, and if I do this right, if I click on these, they start showing up in the top. And alright, they all overlap, and this is, based on my UX, is correct because I have a normal panel here. So I'm going to put wrap panels inside of it. No, we'll just make that thing itself a wrap panel. Wrap panel. Wrap panel. Okay. And so you notice this is one of the cases, reload, it keeps the state. And so we have all these items here. They don't have any actual values to in the result. And they'll just keep adding up here. And we can get rid of this title now. We don't need this title in the center of the page. Okay. And speaking of titles, the sidetrack, you notice the top here still says dice stat comparator. But these pages have titles as well. What you can do is in this thing here, on this top panel bar, which is where our top is, we can also say navigation equals main nav. I think it might be navigation context. And then we can say page title here as well. Okay, and you notice this dice roller. If I had the other page, it'd be the other one. Now, you may be wondering why, how does this connect to the page here? And it has to do with this navigation. Navigation says, in this context, pretend we're inside this navigation. So if we had something like go back, go forward, push, whatever, we're inside there. It also means this page binding. This says, well, connect to the active page. And our active page is the dice roller, and then it uses the property called title. Actually, it's looking for a resource called title, which happens to be connected to the property. And so if we had both pages, you'd see it switch back and forth. And later I'll show you how to add more icons and stuff to these pages for resources. But this is a handy little setup. There are other ways to do it, but this one's really quite handy and simple. Now, let's go back to the actual page. We want to give these a bit of a margin first, just to split them up. Give them some space, but we want to get the functioning first. Let's do some functioning. We actually want to give these results. How do we give them results? Well, if we look at the items themselves, the items only have an expected value. They don't have a way to say get a random value. So we're going to add that, and in the dice roller state, we're going to say definition.random value. And I'm leaving it at items because, and I'm leaving it at random value rather than say roll, because our items might have something else in the dice. It's all I have now are, all they have now are fixed values, but we also have that modifier. And if we add a modifier to this page, the random value is going to be a fixed amount. And so I'm not sure if random value is the best name. It's like an instance value, a random value. Well, I guess I don't know. Let's just say next value. Now, random value is just as clear because next implies that. And now it should complain to us because there is no next value. When I add one, it complains that there is random value is not a function, which is fine. And did it locate? No, locate's not going to work at the moment because we don't have the mapping set up correctly. Okay, and items. Okay, so get random value. And I haven't done random in Java or JavaScript for a long time. And this is for the sides. We have to go for the sides. Var index. These should actually be let, I think. Let. We'll start using a new syntax. Let equals math.random times this dot size dot length. We'll floor that. I'm always hoping for a simpler way to do this in JavaScript, but I still haven't seen one. We're probably moving more of our stuff to TypeScript. Everything will still work with JavaScript, but we should be able to run TypeScript. Maybe it has a better library. And then we can do return this dot size index. Okay, and if we click a die, we get problems. Random value is not a function. Oh yeah, okay. Because I made a get accessor. Because expected values get accessor num size, but random value is clearly not. Accessors should not give you random values. Accessors should be predictable, so we'll make this one a proper function. So if you keep rolling d6, you notice we get different values each time. I don't know what happened to our margin, but that's what we want. We have a different value each time. And I don't know what happened to the margin. Maybe I never saved this file. Something funny there happened. We're missing the margin. That's weird. Wow, this is really funny. This looks like an error in the wrap panel. I bet if I resize. No, that's weird. Okay, so there's a defect here. I'm going to put a workaround to this for now. Panel margin equals 10, and I hope this margin works. And I'll have to look up why that didn't work. Why didn't margin work here? Now does it always work? Now it does, so there's clearly just a small bug. We might want to provide a way to clear this stuff here, and yeah, that's something you might want to do. We have the font awesome stuff, so let's create a button. Let's create clear first on that page. We can use a font awesome X. Where do we want to stick it? We want to stick it in the main thing. We want to put it here. Standard button. Alignment equals bottom right. Margin equals 10. Let's just do the lame way for now. Label equals X. Clicked equals clear dice. So just want to do quickly the standard button, clear dice, and the dice roller page, clear dice. We can do the same thing with clear dice function. Don't need args. This dot selected dice equals nothing. And see, when you save JavaScript, it goes away anyways. And our standard button doesn't have much of a color, but okay, whatever. It works. We'll get back to that. The one thing we might want to do now is we want to show the total value here. And so this is where this page could also have a get total value. And we're going to rely on our own state detection. Rather than updating and tracking the value here, I'm going to rely on the state management system. In a lot of cases, it's not the most efficient thing to do, but it shows off this feature and it does work. And you don't always have these nice clear places where they get cleaned up. So let's do it this way. Var total equals 0, and then we'll say this for let should be constant actually. Yeah, let me do it this way. I'm gonna try and use all these fancy JavaScript features. Constant die of the of feature. This dot selected dice total plus equals die dot definition die dot result. Okay, but now you can start understanding why I didn't add the definitions directly to dice. I added selected dice. I added this wrapper because even though we're using the same definition, they each have a different result. And so this total value down here, we're going to add it all together. And on the page roller page, we're going to stick somewhere near the bottom. Yeah, let's stick it right at the top, actually. Panel doc equals top. And we'll make some big text. Text alignment equals center. Value equals whatever I just called it. And I don't know why it's such a short-term memory loss on that. Total value. Total value. Font size equals 32. Okay. And that should have shown up because it's more than 0. And maybe I forgot to return something. I forgot to return something, so that's why. Even though you'd think it'd be 0 by default, it's actually an empty string by default. So let's see what happens there. There, we have 0. So as we roll dice, the number goes up, and that's what we want. And so that's basically, you know, if you're in D&D, you meet a high-level mage, and you throw a fireball, and you have the row 68, you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's your roll. Some people like playing games this way. I like grabbing the dice and throwing them, but it's an excellent example of how to do a little app. And now we have to clean up the design on this a little bit. And I won't go over all the design bits in here. Like the aesthetics, you can figure out a lot of them on your own, but I'm going to go over the functional aesthetics. The ones that are important here are how we set up maybe an icon for the bottom and how we do the views for the dice, because you notice we had dice views before, and we'd like to reuse them. And this we don't know because we don't actually have graphics for all of these. So you might want to put a little icon beside each of them or whatever. The main one is up here. But let's work on some of the functional bits first. I'm going to go and save this all in Git first because this seems like a reasonable point to save stuff. And this is actually going to put this in the background. Background, okay. And I should be able to zoom in the fonts here. Come on, zoom in. So you guys can see it here. Just close this off. Git status, we're going to do a git add, and we're going to add each of these to it. No. That clicking is a bit off. Okay. Let's push that up for now. And let's do at least the functional bits. And what I mean is we want to put little icons down here. And this has to do a lot with and I'll just do a second resource first of all to show how this works. Page dice roller. This title at the top is a shortcut, but you can actually do another resource. You can do how does this exactly work again? You can do a string UX key equals, let's say icon. I'm going to call icon for now. And let's call it font icon. And we're just going to put the star for now. And I'm just going to show how to use this. Font icon, and it's a star. And why is it whining at me? It's probably not. String does not have a property called, oh yeah, the UX value. These are static values then, not dynamic. Okay. And on the main page, we can use this font icon now. Because what I didn't say is page is actually a shortcut to a resource in that page. So we can actually have, instead of a panel here, let's do a short little stack panel instead. The top we'll do a standard button, and then right below it we'll do a text value equals page font icon. Let's see if I got this right. We do. It's really hard to see because it's a little star there. So now we're gonna, the reason why I call it font icon is now is where we can use the font awesome. We have that defined already. I think in this app we have, so we have font awesome, so we can put it in the font awesome font. And we'll just say this is font equals font awesome. which honestly might make no sense whatsoever for these because these are our own custom apps. But I'll just show how to do it anyways. If you have another font you want to use, and let's go over to Font Awesome and see if they have a suitable one for us. Everybody likes dice rolling. Maybe there's a stats one. Maybe I can choose anything. The Unicode ones might actually make more sense. And honestly, that might make more sense here to just use a Unicode one instead. But they're all colorful. It's one of the things I dislike about Unicode is that they're all colorful and you can't get rid of it. You can't just say, I don't want a colorful one. And so anything here we could use instead. Let's see, stats, stat. No. Any game. It's a game pad. Just go with gamepad for now. It's not that great, and even if we had dice, it wouldn't make sense because the whole app has to do with dice. Now they changed their website to be kind of useless, that it's hard to just get the value of these things anymore. F11B, copy. Where's my page? What's that for now? Dice roller. And X number FB. No, I want a number X. There it is. Oh, just strange syntax. Okay. And does it actually work? It's not defined. Well, that wasn't the intent. So we set up Font Awesome. Main view. Do we save the main file? We didn't. There it is. Now there's a little gamepad there. So we're going to change the color of this first of all. Get rid of this text here. I'm going to call it page title as well. We're going to put the big icon on top. Alignment equals center. Font size equals 32. And text color. We've got to think of what color we want to make this thing. Let's look like our resources. What was standard button? Standard button was using, it's hurting a fixing. So let's use color primary light. Color primary light seems fine. Although the icons, no, they usually don't have a background color unless they're selected. So we'll just say we just need a text color. Color primary text. We'll do line center as well. And while active, we're actually going to give this a color as well, though, just for the purpose of color equals, and it'll have no, actually we're going to give it a rectangle as a background. That makes more sense. So we can have rounded corners, rectangle layer equals background, put it in the background, corner radius equals 5, color equals, it's going to be probably white. So it should be color primary light, but I want it to be transparent. And we're lacking functions right now. Okay, there's way. Oh, we're not lacking the functions to do it. I'm just going to make it very simple. Let's make it a transparent white. UX name equals background, or the back. And this actually has to go inside the stack panel, and the reason why is because the stack panel is our template. So we can't refer to stuff outside the template. Well, we can, but it won't be the right one. And so while active, we're going to change the back dot color to color primary light. And it ignored me entirely. Okay. Text does not have a property called label. That's fine. It's a value. Okay. So this is the active page. That's why it has that background. And maybe we should have padding here. Don't necessarily need it in the top and bottom, so let's just do 5, 0, 5, 2. And that gives us that, but it's no fun unless we have the second one to see it's actually working. So let's go back and finish that off. We have to re-enable that. The main state now, I'm just going to quickly throw in another class page dice sets. Put that closer to the bottom. Now let's just create another file right away. Export default class page dice sets. We don't need anything in the constructor, but I'll put it there anyways. Nice to have. Page dice sets. Give it a name. No, I named it the wrong thing. That was kind of silly. Page dice sets.js. Okay. And we have page dice sets. We already have the UX file, I thought. Where'd it go? We put it in the other directory. Annoying. Can I move it here? No. Well, I'm going to leave it there for now. I might clean that up after. Put it in the wrong directory. Or maybe I put the other one in the wrong directory. And so now we have those pages. Both pages should be there. In the main state, we actually have to create it, though. And we're going to have to import it here as well. Put these two together. Import page dice sets from page dice sets. So now we can add this to our sets of items. That was the list of pages. This is right here. And this controls the order as well, page dice sets. So we put it first, so it's going to appear first. And okay, I don't know what the problem was. No matching template, page dice sets, got mad at me. Page dice stats. I've just called everything different now. So we'll just use the template mapping for now and have different names, and I can clean that up. It should be renamed. Data at the root level is invalid. Well, that's interesting. I don't even know what that means. So let's restart the viewport, which forces everything to rerun. I made a bunch of file changes. What? Okay, it's getting mad at me for something. Oh, it's just taking a while to load. Why is it... I don't know what log it's asking me to look at, and I don't know how to get rid of that error now. I'm going to just double check this. Page dice sets. Page dice sets.js. Main state is page dice sets. Page dice sets, and we did the mapping page dice sets to page dice status. And we knew that page worked before, so since everything seems to be okay, I'm just going to rebuild the whole thing and see what happens. Rebuild is required for the change. Well, yes, that's why I chose a rebuild. But it has errors, okay? Data at the root level is invalid. Well, this is bothersome. I don't know what that means. I'm going to copy this first, and I'm going to stick it somewhere in a file that I have to look at it. No, wrong file. And I'm going to make a random guess and say this.date equals 0. No template matching. We'll rebuild. Data at the root level is invalid. Page dice sets, page dice sets. You know what if it's this other file, this UX file, totally screwing it up? It might be. Let's Let's rebuild it now. Maybe that other file was getting in its way. That would appear to be the case, that the other file, the UX file accidentally saved as, was getting in its way. Now we're just finishing it for reload. Okay, that's good. Now, you notice we're missing the icon? And that's because I didn't give it one. So let's give it another icon. And this one can make more, I'm just going to look for a list icon, right? Anything that looks like a list. Come on, list. 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 That looks like a list. List is fine. F03A, and we'll put that on the page dice sets. And again, it was a string UX key equals font icon value UX value, because these are all static, and X number X, whatever it is. Okay, so now we have the two icons. This is looking more like the traditional sort of app at the bottom. The one other thing to fix here is that you notice the active thing just kind of appears and disappears. We can make a quick fix for that instead. Instead of using while active, we can use the activating animation. And that binds the progress to how much activated it is, so that'll tie it directly to the animation. So now we have it smoothly fade in and out. And let's put a bit of an item spacing here. Stack panel item spacing equals 10. The text here is quite large for an action panel. These action panels tend to have a much smaller font size. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see how big that is. That's actually bigger. Wow, okay. Okay, and no, not here, item spacing 10. On the page indicator, item spacing equals 10. Okay. So now we have the typical one. These aren't the typical colors, and I should go and adjust the colors afterwards for what you typically see in a panel down here. They're usually darker. And in particular, one of the ways they activate it, and this is actually probably a good thing to show as well. So we have the font icon. Let's do it for this way. We actually going to say color primary resources. Where's resources? Light, I think. Light. Primary text. We do primary color light. UX name equals, let's just call it text1. And you can also do this. Change text1.color equals color primary text. I'll show it just with the 1 first. And so you have the subdued icon that becomes fuller when you activate it. Now this is probably a little bit too light. And that has to do with what I'm converting it to. So what would we say for resources? Probably, I don't know, it's hard to say. Color primary. Maybe this should just be color primary, because that's, well, that's the exact that color there. Well, that's no fun. Then primary color dark. Okay. Choosing your color names and stuff is you'll have to work with whoever's doing your aesthetics, your graphic designer, to figure that out. And I just wanted to show a little bit about how you can do this and how you can change these all dynamically to get that more traditional look. Okay. So now we have the 2 pages. Our app is now 2 pages, and at some point we somehow lost our saved data file, and this is something I wanted to get to another time as well, about how you can prevent that from happening, because we must have corrupted it during one of the reloads, which isn't nice. But rebuild, no, it's because rebuild, yeah, rebuild actually clears our data files. It's an issue of desktop things. Kind of makes sense, but you have to be aware of that. And so these are the 2 pages of our app. This one rolls dice. don't have much for graphics here, so we're going to put the views in for those next. Because we want to show little graphics there. At the top, maybe, maybe not. That little thing, the main thing there. And because we're going to work on this page again, let's change the order of the pages. Where are those again? Just so when we reload it, we start directly on that page. And okay, it was stuck on a different page. Don't know why that was. And so we'll work on that page a bit. The stats for that one we can close, and the roller is what we want. Utils we don't need. Page dice sets we don't need. Let's stick this in a rectangle. No, let's put the whole thing in a rectangle. And stroke width equals 2. Stroke color equals color primary text. Text color equals color primary text. That gives that at least a little bit. We should put some padding on here. We'll give this one padding of 5, all directions. No, alignment equals center. And a margin as well, we want it to take it away from the top, so just from the top and from the bottom. It doesn't need to come from the sides. And that's a little ugly when it's small, so let's give it a min width as well. Let's give it a min width of 50. It'll get bigger than that. And that should be fine. So as we update the values, it'll get bigger. It has to get quite big before it's bigger, so let's do some d20s. So I think this is a reasonable size for it. And now we want to make these, we don't want D64, we want the little graphic representations for them. And I'm going to put a quick save point on the git as well, because we never made another feature. Git add. Restore nav, add icons. Okay. And so in the main view, what I mean is when we clicked on here, we're also using names there. But when you choose them, you have the representation. So we never did it here either. So let's figure out if we can do this. Can we actually show the graphic up there? We might not be able to do this easily because I remember why we didn't show them here. But it would be nice to have the graphics down here. Well, some players, this would make a reasonable toggle. Do you want to show the numbers or do you want to show the die itself? Because if you're not used to these shapes, especially the graphics, it's hard to select. But let's consider what we can do anyways. First of all, we have these views. And we have like a standard die. And it has a number of sides to it. And it's part of the definition. And here, this is interesting, we can actually totally abuse how JavaScript works here and how our binding works. It's not really abuse, it's that we also have this definition field. We'll do like the Python style duck typing. This view works as long as there's a field called definition. And we happen to have that in ours. So in the page dice roller on each of these dice, these are actually the definitions. So we could put right in here standard die view standard die. And why would it get mad at us though? It doesn't. And oh, why do you do that? It's not all supposed to be the same. Well, that's interesting. That didn't work quite as intended. Why is it not using the definition? It's chosen the 6-sided one. No, it's chosen the default. Or has it? I don't know which one is chosen. It's done something wrong, that's for sure. And it's supposed to bind there. I'm trying to figure out why it wouldn't bind to that now. But you can see it's viewing there. Why would it not bind? Why would it not bind? Name, dice. Because those are definitions. Sorry, these are the actual definitions. Whereas this is expecting it to go inside. It's not expecting the definition to be there already. So we can fix that. Let's fix this view, and I'll show what happens once we fix this view. We say, well, this view should be for a definition. Shouldn't it? No, it shouldn't. What else do we use this view for? Let's look at the view modifier item. The view modifier item uses the modifier, doesn't use a definition. So these are getting items. These views are for the items, not the definitions. And so the Dark Souls die has a very similar setup, and it uses definition.color. It only uses color. How can we do this easily? I'm trying to think. I want to reuse these things, and I don't want to change it too much. I want to put this whole thing in a separate file. And where do I use view standard die? I must use that on dice set. Where is view standard die? View. I have view standard die right here. Okay. We can simply change that definition to be something else. And say, take the definition instead. This gives us a quick option to reuse this. That's going to hate us for that. And in the standard die, we take off the definition because we're now in the context of a definition. There we go. Now, if I did it correctly, this still works over here. I can still change the definition. Okay. Now, you can raise your hand if you say, what on earth did you do? Why does that help anything? Other than giving us pretty graphics, what we did is I changed the definition of view standard die to really be a definition viewer. Let's look at the definition strictly on its own. I can reuse this class. But in the dice set, these items are not definitions. These are the items. And here I said instance says, instance rebinds things. It creates things in a template and it rebinds the definition and lets you reuse that. I might have a naming convention problem here first, and I think I'm going to do this offline. I'm going to rename these things to give consistent names and the best naming practice because I don't know if having this wrapper here actually makes sense. This is something that you might... It starts getting confusing because the other ones don't have it, so we're actually inconsistent. These views here is not consistent with these ones, but it lets me quickly set up what I wanted here, and I'm going to quickly change the layout of that as well so we have a slightly better view. Let's say people don't maybe also want the text. We can also put the text here, and we'll put it at the bottom, and we can make the margin to be slight overlap, because why not? And we don't want a color on here. Why does this have a color? Color's right there. Doesn't need a color. Okay, and this should be alignment equals center. And we can actually put it a bit closer to the text as well. -4, -8. This can actually overlap. Really doesn't want to though. 18. There we go. That would overlap. But then because it moves everything down. whatever. -8 was actually good enough. That gives us a decent layout. So now you have both the text and that. What we don't have yet for wrap panels, we don't have content alignment. This is something that would be nice, right? We don't have this yet. So you can't center these items, or actually alignment, center, can I? No, there's no default for that. This is actually on my list. I started doing it, but you can't do it yet. But then we have these nice graphics here at least, but not at the top. Okay. But we can see how we get them, so I think that covers what I want to do with that. You can see how you could create them up there as well. And before I do that, I'd like to make the names a bit more consistent. And this X we can also clean up. Let's do the X again. We might as well clean that up. And what does our standard button have? Where is this? Resources. There's no easy way to change the standard button. So let's do this. String UX property equals font icon, text value. We can just have these overlap. Only one of them is going to be defined, so it doesn't matter. Probably slightly slower, not a great idea, but there's only one defined, so font size equals pretty small. Let's make it bigger, because people like bigger ones. Font equals font awesome. And that's our font icon. And instead over here of the X, instead of saying label equals X, we can say font icon equals, and then go pick one. Let's look for close. Not Windows close. Or is there like a clear? No clear. Is there a delete? Is there a remove? It's an alias for the X, so. But it's fine. I don't know if it looks any different than the X we're removing, but it might have a slightly improved. It has a slightly improved graphical appearance to an X, and it's going to have a better alignment to it. You can often notice when people use an X as opposed to a correct typographical like times or multiply or close, because they're bottom aligned and they don't line up quite correctly. Amber X. So now we have a little X there instead. It should have a bit of a background though. Why does it not have a background? Because the color primary of the background is white. But we want to use white for this background. There's no reason not to have it. We should be able to override the color here as well. Color primary. Now we have the X there as well. This layout's not ideal that you have these here and this here, but we might have more on this palette. And so for now I'm going to leave it, but that shows where those buttons are. And what I'd also like to do is put a little reroll button on the top. Or should these be on the bottom? Hard to say. It's a tough layout question, because you don't want to have reload beside the clear button. And clear's a bit, and if you put them in random places, it gets a little bit annoying as to what to press. But let's make a reload button somewhere. Standard button. Oh, I copied wrong. Let's just say top right for now. And okay, I'm gonna go for the UX argument here, is that the clear button should be top right because that's harder to get to, and the bottom right should be our reload button because that's what we actually want to. It's called reroll. That's what we want to call more frequently. The user's going to want to re-roll more often than they're going to want to clear it. Maybe. Yeah, I'm guessing. You'd have to actually sit down and watch somebody use the thing. Maybe they want to clear more often. It's very hard to say. Maybe they want to... maybe they just want to roll once. But let's hope this has some sort of... Let's see. What do we have? Recycle. There's a recycle one. Or refresh. Refresh is probably more correct. I said with Font Awesome, was first released before we had a lot of Unicode emoji, and it's still good because they're black, but a lot of these are in Unicode now, and most browsers have fallbacks for them, so it's not terrible to use Unicode as well. Okay, it's going to complain that we don't have a reroll. And here I'm calling it reroll, even though I said it's not technically reroll, but I'm okay with that. And so we're going to say for constant die of this dot selected dice. Now this is where the constant keyword in JavaScript, I believe, is misleading. It doesn't make the actual value of die constant, it just makes the name constant, so you can't rebind the name. We can still call functions on it, like die.reroll. Reroll. And we're just going to get a new result here, next random value. Okay, and so we'll add a few dice, 3d6s, and if we re-roll it now, absolutely nothing happens. We're going to figure out why. Definition split, okay, I don't know for sure what that is. Uh-oh, we broke something there. I'm going to have to go back to that, okay? I want to fix this page first. Why are we not getting to re-roll? And clicked equals re-roll. Let's see if we're getting there first of all. Console.log re-roll. Uh-oh. Reroll. Aha. So definition not found is actually here. This dot definition not random. I don't know why it keeps going away on me. Okay, so the re-rolling actually works now. That's what we wanted. You re-roll, and this should have some kind of animation. I can't do a 3D one, but in case you re-roll to the same value, you should put some kind of animation here. I showed last week a shaking animation, so let's put that on here. Let's give that a bit of space and give this a shaking animation. We still have the clear, that'll put it back to 0. Re-rolling will also make it 0. We want to make it shake now. And how can we make it shake? Well, I showed last week how we can do a typical shaking, and I'm going to do a similar one here. We're going to put a translation on here. X equals 0, Y equals 0. UX name equals shake trans. Timeline. And let's say UX name equals shake. And we'll make it shake for, I don't know, 1 second. This is going to really annoy some users waiting a second, but others might not. And we're going to want to cycle shake trans.x target, it's target low equals minus. How much do we want to shake to the left? Let's say minus 10. High equals 10 with a frequency of, and if you put a really high frequency, it doesn't look like a cycling, it really looks like shaking because it's too fast for the frame rate. And so we'll give it a frequency of, say I put 7.13, and again I explained last week why we use weird numbers, things with primes, or so when we have multiple things shaking, we don't accidentally create another cycle out of it. So these do not line up. So 9.27, there's no way this is going to line up. And we're going to make this padded away from the top a bit more so it has some more room to shake, even though it's mainly shaking left and right. And when they press reroll, where's the reroll here? You can put a second handler here, clicked, and we can do pulse target equals shake. This is actually going to be 2 seconds because of the fact it's going to play it forward and backwards. User probably won't notice. Uh-oh. I spelled frequency wrong. Okay. Okay. So we get that, and you may want to like change the number instead of first. So you can at least say it's updating, but you see the value is immediately there, and maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe while this is running, you actually want to do. You could continually change the value of it, or you could simply make it a different value. Oh, this is going to be hard. Let's hide it. Change, you have to give it a name. Result text. Result text dot visibility equals hidden, and change UX name equals result block. And I'm just going to choose a gray value for now. Make it take 0.1 seconds. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it does it serves the UX need. It shows that it's actually recalculating. The values are all there. And so if you do end up with the same number, you won't be wondering why is it exactly the same number. This was like really far darker than I wanted. And it comes back and forth. And you might actually want to put like a different value in there, like a number. And I want to see if I can actually see. Let's try one more expression here. This is the last thing to do is that we should be able to say in here property shake.progress. If it's greater than 0, then use total value. Then use a string called, throw a number in there, otherwise use total value. I wonder if this will work. What we want to say is that as long as a progress, a shake is greater than 0, it's shaking. Don't show the number. Show the number sign instead. Now we can get rid of this visibility. Yeah, and that works then. And this shows off an example of using the expression, instead of having to worry about too much in the bindings, is that while this is shaking, it shows a number. And then it shakes, and when it's done, you can see the result. And this gives us a, it's not like the most beautiful effect, of course, there's very limited, but it shows how we hooked it up together. And we can clear the dice here as well. This doesn't look like it's in the right place, but we understand. This is where you'd want to do some UX texting. Where should these buttons go? They should be a bit bigger. And I know I still have a problem over here, but I can go fix this one sort of offline because we've lost those bits now. So sorry about that. But this is what I want to. I have the stats and I have the action panel. To recap, what we did is we created this new page. We created a page control, and we used this pages item to bind to pages back in the data set in the context. And these are templates. We created these little icons. We showed how the page title binding works to create the icon and the title. And at the top, you notice at the top it does actually change titles as you change pages. We disabled the sliding. We reused the definitions for these dice, and you can click on them to roll. We did a silly little graphic to refresh them, to shake it. And we'd probably want to reduce the time on that because that's really long. And it needs to just be short. And we didn't get to the serialization, and I think I've covered enough for today. I'm going to have to get to serialization next time. I won't have an episode this Wednesday because I'll be doing a presentation Wednesday evening. If you happen to be Berlin, check on Meetup for the Fuse presentation and you can come join us. Otherwise, I'll be back next week and I can try cleaning this up by then. And it depends on what I accomplish in the week, whether we'll come back to this in serialization and if I can clean up the code, because I don't want to continue until I can reset up this code a bit, some of the refactoring. This refactoring isn't so exciting to do online. I'll say what I did next time. But that's all I had for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying this. If you have any questions and you didn't get a chance to catch me live, you can tell us in our Slack channels, the few Slack channels, or follow me on Twitter, let me know there, and please subscribe to my Twitch channel and like the videos if you do like them. Every like and follow does help. And thank you very much, and until next time, enjoy Fuse.